Hello and welcome back to Sibos TV. I'm Jack DeLosa.
And I'm Juliette Foster. Coming up here on Talking Sibos, we're looking at the rise of quantum computing across the banking industry.
Quantum computing was first theorized in the 1980s. Scientists speculated that a huge leap in the power of computing could be achieved if we harnessed the physics of subatomic particles. For a long time, it seemed like science fiction, but in the last year or two, quantum computing has been getting a great deal of serious attention across the banking industry. Here to tell us why, we're joined by Dr. Anna Fan, research scientist at IBM, and Dr. Leda Glyptis, Chief of Staff at 11FS. Anna and Leda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Anna, we might start with you. Talk to us about why quantum computing is getting so much attention in the banking industry right now.
So quantum computing is actually getting a lot of attention from all types of industries at the moment, because we've had a huge improvement in the technology over the past couple of years. So we're at a very interesting stage with the hardware at the moment, where we're really at the limits of what we can do with our classical computers today compared to our quantum computers. So in the next few years, we think that we'll actually be able to find a use case where a quantum computer will be able to solve it faster than a classical computer.
Does this mean that quantum computers will ultimately replace ordinary computers?
No, so we see them working in tandem with classical computers, similarly to how cars work in tandem with planes. You use a classical computer for, let's say, emails or slides, and you'll use a quantum computer for specialized applications.
And I know we're all fascinated by this. What capabilities do quantum computers have that traditional computers don't?
So that's actually something that research scientists and industry experts are working on today.
Right.
So we know that in the future, when we have very, very large quantum computers, they'll be able to solve some very specific problems. But now that we have the hardware and we can play with it, we're seeing other applications emerge. Things like improving Monte Carlo simulations, things like trying to see if we can do quantum machine learning, things like if we're trying to improve optimization.
Right. And are there any other applications that you see quantum computing making, either to the banking world or the world at large?
So we've been playing with, there's some people have been theorizing some interesting work in these Monte Carlo simulations for risk analysis and derivatives pricing. They've been able to show a bit of a speed up maybe compared to classical computers, but currently we only have very small quantum computers and we have very, very large classical computers. So it's a bit of an unfair analogy, like unfair comparison.
Right, right. And Leda, if we go to you, how do you think quantum computing will benefit the banking industry specifically?
There are two areas where bankers are beginning to sort of wake up to quantum computing. One is the speed question, and from a banker's perspective, there's a little bit of I don't need to worry about that too much yet because it's not ready, and also technology is faster than most of banking processing anyway, so I can let that develop. But the second area that is both extremely exciting and a little scary from a banking perspective is what Anna touched on. What else could it do in terms of stimulation, risk analysis, and pricing? And it's an open and unanswered question for banks, but I expect that we will have a lot of bankers flocking to Anna's session and other sessions like it to learn what it is they need to be thinking about.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't surprise me. Leda, what do banking professionals need to know about quantum computing in order to really harness its power?
So there are three things that bankers need to sort of be thinking about. One is they don't fully understand how their systems work today unless they're in IT. And that's okay. So they don't need to first understand how quantum computing works in order to use it. And that sounds so basic, but actually there is a need, and we've seen it with the digital transformation work that we've been doing over the last few years. There's this need to understand how things work from people who didn't necessarily have the right background in physics or computing. So letting go of that need and focusing on the capabilities and the art of the possible is a big thing. The second is, in order to understand how this works, there needs to be an understanding that as a bank, you probably won't own the hardware. So it's about the types of partnerships you're comfortable building with people who will invest in the hardware, who will have the hardware and can help you think it through. And then the third piece is the imagination component. If this technology allows you to think about pricing differently, risk differently, then that differently piece is half about the technology and half about the business knowledge. Hiring people who can bridge that gap is the next big challenge for the industry.
Let's talk about that. What sort of people do you believe we need to be bringing into the industry?
We're already seeing a shift from a division between our technologists and our business people to hybrid teams and hybrid capabilities and people who combine the two in order to take banks from an analog world into a sort of more digital world. That will be an absolute necessity as you're going forward. I remember many years ago I had to go through all the hoops manageable to hire a theoretical physicist in a technology team because nobody could understand the value they would bring at the time. Now we will be going out hunting for them because they are the people who can help us bridge those gaps. But the answer truly is we don't know. Right? As these capabilities emerge, we will start seeing the knowledge gaps and skills gaps we have in banking in the next 2 to 5 years, and we'll be hiring a very different type of person.
Yes, yes. Anna, let's further explore the when. When do you think that quantum computing will be widely used across the banking industry?
So I think in the near term, let's say the 2 to 5 year stage, we'll find that application where quantum computers will be able to do something of use compared to classical computers. So that will be companies and industries will be using them for those particular applications. And I think in terms of broader adoption and use by multiple applications and use cases, that will be sort of decades in the future.
Dr. Anna Fan, Dr. Leda Glyptis, thank you so much for joining us on Sibos TV.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Australia has one of the world's most innovative banking industries. It's rapidly building digital infrastructure, including its new payments platform. And here to share with us his perspective on digital banking, including the Australian experience, is Nigel Dobson. Nigel is the Banking Services Lead at ANZ Bank. Welcome to Sibos TV.
Thank you.
Now, we know that globally, banking is becoming digital. So what do you see as the key trends and issues that we need to be looking at?
Well, certainly at this conference, real-time will be a key issue. And I think we've seen the maturity of real-time grow and spread across the globe. And with that, also the development of open banking regimes, I think, are really critical and will be a topic that I think we'll spend a lot of time on. And also, I'd love to see a theme of urgency around meeting our customers' digital expectations. And I think that's one thing that Sibos can do really well, is bring those conversations together and grab the themes and then run with the what's the benefit for the customer. And I think that's what I'm hearing more and more as I attend these conferences.
And the new game in town in Australia, of course, is the new payments platform. It was launched last year.
Yes.
So how does it work?
Well, it's an innovative real-time payments system in as much as it's not a central infrastructure. It's what's called a distributed model that SWIFT brought to Australia for the first time and very successfully implemented on behalf of the participants. What I love about the architecture is that every bank has its own effective gateway. There's no point of failure, no single point of failure like a central infrastructure, so it's got that resiliency. But it's also got other attributes, like it's 24/7, it's got a data carriage capability that increases the data share between participants. And it's also, we launched at the same time an addressing service called PayID, so people can register their phone number or an email address, and that becomes the alias for their bank account, so they never have to remember their bank account details again. So a range of services in a very contemporary architecture, and we're very proud of it.
Okay, and the litmus test, what sort of reception has it had from businesses and, of course, individuals?
Well, so far it's been rolled out in stages, and this was such a significant project for the industry. Not only was it the implementation of what we call the basic infrastructure, which SWIFT delivered for us, and the integration of those gateways into our payment stacks, we had to renovate. Every participant had to renovate its own payment stack to become real time, and 24/7, 4.5 to 5 nines resiliency. So that is not an insignificant task, and so we took a number of years. We launched back in February of this year, and we've staged the rollout across the participants. What we're seeing at the moment is the take-up is significant. We've got 50 million accounts that are available at the moment across the country for real-time payments. There's 70 financial institutions participating, large and small, in the system. And last week, for example, we processed in just a week 2.4 million payments. across real time. So it's absolutely in production, but not every channel and every customer account is reachable. That'll stage over the course of this and early next year. But certainly the reaction has been, from a consumer point of view, quite good. What they love is the emojis, believe it or not.
The emojis.
Emojis. Who thought? But the fact that you can use a contemporary kind of messaging capability along with the payment is I think, really nice. And it's delightfully fast. And people are surprised when they see money move so quickly. I think for our corporates, they're still waiting for greater reach and greater penetration across the economy. They're certainly looking forward to better reconciliation information, faster cash flow coming into their business, and greater certainty around their payments.
Right, so a thumbs up all round, really.
I think so.
Excellent.
Yes.
Now, look, we know that MPP is also designed to work with these overlay services. So tell us what these overlay services will actually do. How will they enhance it?
Well, the whole idea of how MPP was architected was to build a very basic infrastructure, as I've referred to, but also then have this overlay service capability, which invites not just banks, but fintechs and large techs to come and collaborate and make advantage out of the opportunities that certain use cases could be staged on the platform. They could be anything from a government service sending money to disadvantaged people on the weekend. It could be sending money from insurers to folks who've been hit by bad weather or some natural disaster. And the great thing about it, because it's 24/7, 365 days, you can make a payment anytime. And so the ability to service your customers around the clock is tremendous. So we think there's emerging use cases, particularly one we're focused on now, which is request to pay. And our large corporate customers are waiting for this to be delivered, which is simply being able to make a request to an individual or a legal entity and have that payment returned as an acknowledgement. And we think that's a really valuable service. We're seeing that request to pay service emerge around other real-time economies as well. But that brings in the big billers who would love to be able to receive their money through real-time account-to-account transactions rather than relying on other means. It's going to be cheaper, faster, and better all round.
Growing all the time as well. And what I'd like to look at now are the possibilities, especially those that are being opened up for businesses and public sector services as a result of MPP. It must be huge.
Well, I think the opportunity is significant. There are a number of government agencies, notwithstanding the tax department, who are quite keen, but also they give a substantial number of refunds, of course, too, so those people can get their money and their refunds faster. I think you get great transparency and an audit trail with MPP as well, and I mentioned earlier how certain government agencies could service the disadvantaged in all manner of situations and times. So I do think that those sorts of opportunities are yet to evolve. But there is a certain network effect around the platform as well. The more participants you have working with an overlay, working with the idea and getting that notion into the economy, the network effect is tremendous, and that's what really drives it.
And the vibe which I'm getting off you as well when you take this overview is this system of partners, an ecosystem of partners at ANZ.
Yes.
So what sort of organisations do you see wanting to be part of that ecosystem that you're constructing?
Well, look, in general, we think ecosystems are the future of financial services and either driving them or participating in them or providing services into them. Right now, we look for partners that can augment our customer experience. So if we think about our priority sectors like homeowners and business owners, we tend to think that we can provide them with a number of financial services, but we can't necessarily provide them with services that are non-native to banking. For example, searching for a property, or how do I start my business? How do I sell my business? And these are all the kinds of services that we want to bring in and surround our clients with and give them a better digital experience. So partners that can deliver that adjacent service in the context of whatever the customer journey is. Those are the kind of people we want to deal with. Now, they could be fintechs, they could be large established technology companies, or even government agencies. So that's our notion of an ecosystem.
But what it points to as well is that services like NPP are really changing the banking industry. So let's look into the future. How do you see the role of a bank going forward in 10, 20 years' time, a century's time?
Let me take the 5 to 10 year view. Look, I think what we're seeing with the drive and direction of regulation in particular, and I'll use open banking as an example, where the intent of that regulation is to drive greater transparency into the economy, the freer flow of customer data and give the customer the jurisdiction over that data, the ownership, which is, I think, really important. And I think it's also about how those ecosystems evolve around a range of services, as I said, contextually giving a customer a greater experience. So banks become a service provider to those digital experiences. Now, we may be prominent in that experience. We may have ANZ Blue experience, or we may be almost invisible in an experience. We may just be a payment gateway or some sort of channel to fulfill a transaction. So that's a spectrum upon which we'll sit. And I think we'll want to drive the meaningful strategic customer segments like homeowners and business owners, trade capital flows, and participate in other ecosystems where we provide more utility services. And as I say, there'll be a range of participation options for us.
Yeah, but it's exciting times ahead nonetheless. But Nigel, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on Sibos TV. Thank you
very much.
And that's it for this show, but there's much more coming up here on Sibos TV, including live coverage of this morning's big issue debate, which asks if a cyber 9/11 event is inevitable. That's next.
And we'll be back with more in Lunch with Sibos right here at 1 o'clock. So we'll see you then.